The MLK myth. You know, there's this misconception that when we talk about MLK, oftentimes people that are in the spotlight, so to speak, they talk about him the same way that school textbooks spoke about MLK. They whitewash his legacy. They mention positions that MLK had that the status quo finds acceptable. But they leave out positions that MLK had that are also even more important and go further than I have a dream. And we're going to talk about that tonight. And first, we're going to talk about some of the hypocrisy. We're going to point out some of the people that decided to talk about MLK's holiday as if they have the nerve to do so. So first up on the list is Joe Biden. I want you to hear what Joe Biden said on MLK Day.
Which Dr. King led, and I quote, he said his goal was to redeem the soul of America. In his sermon to the march in Washington, Dr. King called on all America to live up to the full meaning and promise of our Declaration of Independence. But here we stand with Dr. King to show out of struggle, there's progress. Out of despair, there's hope. From the promise of equality and opportunity, of jobs, justice, and freedom.
We're just going to pause it right there. He talks about equality, opportunity, justice, freedom, and jobs. Okay. Let's talk about equality for just a second in reference to Joe Biden, right? Because a lot of times people want to point to the fact and say Joe Biden was Obama's VP. Joe Biden selected a Black woman to be his VP. That has nothing to do with who Joe Biden is as a person, the type of legislation that he implemented, even when he was senator, and what he actually stood for. Because let's go there. This is the same guy. You can still find the picture today riding around in the car with racist segregationists, co-writing the crime bill with Strom Thurmond, racist Strom Thurmond. He has the nerve to talk about equality and justice and freedom. This is the same guy after thousands of people were out in the street demanding some type of police reform or defunding the police. This is the same guy who decided we're going to give more money to the police, but he wants to talk about justice and freedom. The same guy who said he didn't want his kids to grow up in a racial jungle. That guy. This guy. And he sits up here on this high horse. Let's talk about the goodness of MLK and the soul of this country. MLK would not approve of the things that Joe Biden has done during his career as a politician. This is the same guy who pointed to Anita Hill, pointed to a Black woman right in her face, talked down to her when she was trying to explain to people what Clarence Thomas did to her. Same guy who refused to let her witnesses testify. Do you think MLK would have been okay with that? Do you think MLK would have been okay with Joe Biden's crime bills? Do you think he would have approved of some of the statements that Joe Biden has made about Black people? I don't think he would have. But this is the hypocrisy.
We see Black excellence, American excellence, Black history as American history, and a defining source of the might of this nation. Dr. King.
So it's the pandering, right? It's the pandering, because you can sit up here and you can quote MLK and you can say all the great things that you feel MLK did, but your actions speak louder. MLK would have referred to Joe Biden as a warmonger and a segregationist. Let's just keep it real. We'll go on. There's more. The Israel account. This one was probably one of the worst ones. Just a Thought said, sorry, what? So they quoted MLK and they said, Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Martin Luther King Jr. This is coming from the Israel account. The state of Israel. The same state that has referred to Palestinian people as being animals. The same state that has said that Palestinian kids are the children of the dark. The same state of Israel that sterilized Ethiopian women against their will. They have the audacity to sit up here and quote MLK. There's more. I told you, people showed their whole ass yesterday. Probably one of my favorite ones was the FBI. The FBI. This MLK Day, the FBI honors one of the most prominent leaders in civil rights movement and reaffirms its commitment to Dr. King's legacy of fairness and equal justice for all. This is the FBI. Now, see, even Community Notes picked up on this. The FBI engaged in surveillance of King, attempted to discredit him, and used manipulation tactics to influence him to stop organizing. King's family believed the FBI was responsible for his death. They killed this man. You know, it's just the hypocrisy of it all. That's what just drives me crazy. They don't realize the times that we live in today where you can easily just pull up things on social media or the internet. And then there was this one. Secretary Anthony Blinken. Because you see, he said, today, we honor Dr. Martin Luther King and the lasting impact of his legacy. He dedicated his life to pursuing a dream of a world with more justice, equality, and freedom, the very core of our American values. This is coming from Secretary Anthony Blinken. Now, call me crazy, but MLK was anti-war. MLK was anti-capitalist. MLK was pro-reparations, which oftentimes a lot of people don't bring that up. Before MLK was assassinated, he was trying to unite the workers in Alabama, trying to unite the workers. So he was pro-union. He was also pro-universal basic income. You see, all these people that I've shown you, they're not going to mention these things because that doesn't fit the status quo. That doesn't fit their agenda. And that's definitely not what either party wants you to know about. But the nerve of Anthony Blinken, of all people. So I don't think I've ever received a tweet that received this many likes. It got 47,000 likes. I retweeted this and I said, keep MLK name out your mouth while bombing children in Gaza. Keep the name out your mouth. Just keep it. Because there are a lot of people right now on the interwebs yesterday, all the Zionists coming in saying MLK was pro-Zionist. Is that true? Is it really true that MLK was a Zionist? We're going to show you something in a minute. But all these people are just, just stop. Keep MLK's name out your mouth if you are pro-genocide, if you are pro-war, if you're actively aiding in the conflict abroad, if you refuse to call for a ceasefire, keep MLK's name out your mouth, okay, Anthony Blinken? Because I don't think MLK will be okay with you dropping bombs all across the world. Just stop it. Stop it. The audacity of it all. How dare you shout out MLK's name and you're talking about justice and equality, and you are working hand in hand with an oppressor, the state of Israel. to completely eradicate the Palestinian people. That's not equality. That's not justice. That's not a core American value that he refers to so much. It's a hot mess. A hot mess. But it gets worse. Because you see, apparently, there was also an interview with RFK Jr. where he is now defending his father's involvement for wiretapping MLK. I kid you not. Let's see it's all over the place, honey. It was all over the place yesterday. RFK Jr. defends Kennedy administration for wiretapping MLK Jr. I can't believe I even have to say this, but it's a hot mess. Independent 2024 candidate RFK came out in defense of his family's authorization, of wiretapping of MLK in the 1960s, saying politically they had to do it. The day before MLK Day, Mr. Kennedy told Politico that his father, then Attorney General RFK, and his uncle, then President JFK, allowed the FBI to listen in on King because they were making big bets on King, particularly in organizing the March on Washington. They were betting not only the civil rights movement, but their own careers, he continued. Mr. Kennedy said that his family knew the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, was out to ruin King, and that Hoover told the Kennedys that the civil rights leader had ties to communism. My father gave permission to Hoover. Listen to this again now. My father gave permission to Hoover to wiretap them so he could prove that his suspicions about King were either right or wrong. I think politically they had to do it. Despite acknowledging this, his family understood Hoover to be a racist and left no doubt where he stood on civil rights. He contested that President Kennedy would have fired Hoover in his second term had he survived to see it. Now, that's his belief. That's his guess. But my thing is, why not fire him during his first term? President Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. Mr. Kennedy also told the outlet that he believed his uncle had privately warned King about the wiretaps. Again, he does not know. He's assuming. Like when I tell you yesterday was a complete clown show, it was a complete clown show. Now, Cornel West actually called this out. He said, "My dear brother, RFK Jr., RFK is dead wrong in his defense of his father and uncle viciously wiretapping the great MLK Jr. This is COINTELPRO repression that includes threats and attacks of the Black freedom movement was despicable. Let us not, in retrospect, minimize its massive damage in these struggles for human dignity and freedom." Because, it's wild. It is a straight up clown show. We had Michael Rappaport. He's going around telling everybody MLK was a Zionist. They all over the place, guys. Cancel this Zionist today. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a Zionist, and there's no doubt he would be canceled if he were alive today. So listen to this, guys. And I'm going to show you something that Michael is leaving out.
The world must see that Israel must exist and has the right to exist and is one of the great outposts of democracy in the world.
My Jewish brothers and sisters said to me amid anti-Semitism anywhere, we don't need your support. We have enough Jewish power to deal with this problem ourselves. I would still take a stand against anti-Semitism because it's wrong, it's unjust, and it's evil. If my Catholic brothers and sisters said to me, amid bigotry toward Catholics, we don't need your support in this because we have enough Catholic power to deal with it, I would still take a stand against bigotry toward Catholics because it is wrong, it is evil, and it is unjust.
So that's what he's using as his defense, that he believes that MLK was a Zionist. Let me show you what he's leaving out, though. This gentleman said it so well. Now, to be fair, will I say that MLK was as radical when it came to Gaza as Malcolm X? No. Malcolm X was obviously more radical when it came to that issue. But people are taking these little short clips of what MLK said, and they're leaving out the context, which I think is incredibly important. And I think it's really important that you understand a couple of things that were happening at that point in time as well. Number one, did we have the power of the Israeli lobby back then the way it is today? No, we did not. Remember, during that same time, we talked about this before, that JFK did not share the same position on Israel that a lot of the Zionists do today. He was worried that Zionism was going to become what it has become today. So you do have to remember things were different at that point in time. And just because you have that clip of MLK saying that he felt like Israel had a right to exist, he was talking about Israel's borders. He wasn't talking about, oh, that the West Bank and Gaza, that the Palestinians should be removed. He never agreed with that. And this is what they leave out. And they also leave out this important point as well. What happened when MLK was supposed to go to Israel and give a speech, and why that did not happen? And this part right here is incredibly important. This gentleman here said, misquoting Martin and Malcolm. Listen to this. This is very important because he breaks this down.
MLK embraced Israel. Does BLM embrace Hamas?
Israel has a right to exist.
MLK would be turning over in his grave right now. I wonder what MLK would think. Okay, let's talk about it. It's the summer of 1967, and Martin Luther King Jr. is scheduled to take thousands of African Americans, Black people, to Israel for a tour of the Holy Land. But something catastrophic happens that complicates the entire plan. People love to use MLK to fit whatever agenda they have at the moment. But we don't have to guess where he stands. He speaks for himself. I have the transcript from an interview that MLK did on national TV in 1967 that rarely gets talked about. But first, some context. This trip to Israel was going to be huge. Records indicate that he planned to preach a sermon from the Mount of Olives, the place where Jesus ascended into heaven. He plans to pray with thousands of people at the region's holy sites in Jerusalem and Galilee. This was going to be his Moses moment, taking Black people to the promised land. But the problem is that just a few weeks before, Israel launched a preemptive attack against the pro-Palestine alliance of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, starting what became known as the Six-Day War, which killed around 800 Israelis and about 18,000 Arabs.
See, even back then, when we talk about the casualties, there were always more. When we talk about the amount of Arabs that were killed, you had like 18,000 here, and I think he said like 800 Israelis. The casualties were always higher on the side, on the Arab side.
In less than a week. It also fundamentally changed the map. Israel expanded its borders, gaining about 4 times the land it had before, capturing Jerusalem and establishing military occupation in the Gaza Strip. Even though the war was over in just 6 days, MLK will cancel his trip. And this war will mark a turning point in King's nuanced position on Israel. Here's the statement. The interviewer asks MLK, should Israel, in your opinion, give back the land she is taken in conflict?
Pay attention to this, because see, this is the piece that they're leaving out.
And here's part of MLK's response. I think for the ultimate peace and security of the situation, it will probably be necessary for Israel to give up this conquered territory, because to hold on to it will only exacerbate the tensions and deepen the bitterness of the Arabs.
But Michael Rappaport isn't going to tell you that part. There were a number of Zionists yesterday, all up and down my Twitter feed, leaving this out. They won't tell you that, though.
This moment offers profound insight into what King believed was necessary to achieve peace between Israel and Palestine. King's name and legacy are thrown around carelessly to justify all kinds of things, but in this instance, we don't have to guess what he thought.
And something else I want to show you as well, in reference to that interview that he's referring to. Pull this up because I actually added that here. Yeah, I included that in that thread. The Washington Post covered that interview. The Washington Post covered that interview, and they posted that yesterday on MLK's birthday. So when it came to Israel and Gaza, again, like I said, Malcolm X obviously was further to the left than MLK was about that particular issue. But for all the Zionists that are on Twitter trying to make it seem like MLK was a Zionist, all this kind of stuff, they are leaving out an important, what I feel is an important interview that he felt it would be best for Israel to give up that territory. But they're not telling you that part. We have to pay attention. We have to pay attention. And you'll hear all these people, the women on The View, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, all of these pundits on mainstream media brag about MLK's legacy, and everybody mentions the I Have a Dream speech, but they don't tell you about some of these other speeches that MLK had. They don't tell you that MLK was calling for cash reparations. They don't want to bring that up. Doesn't fit with the status quo. They don't want to tell you that MLK was anti-war. He would not approve of these wars. They don't want to tell you that MLK was trying to unite the workers, to unify the workers. You see, when MLK was just focused on uniting people based on race, that was one thing. But the moment that MLK started to talk about economic issues in this country, he started to talk about the class struggle and uniting people in reference to class as well, then they killed him. This is the part that a lot of people leave out. We have to be sure to show up and tell people the truth.